Welcome, dear viewers, to another powerful and thought-provoking journey into the hidden stories of the Bible. If you love uncovering forgotten figures, biblical mysteries, and untold truths, then you're in the right place. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story that will deepen your understanding of Scripture. And be sure to share this video with others. The Bible tells us much about Moses, the great prophet, the deliverer of Israel, the man who stood before Pharaoh and parted the Red Sea. But what about the woman who stood beside him before all of this? Today, we will uncover the mysterious and often overlooked story of Zipporah, the Midianite wife of Moses. She was a woman of strength, courage, and sacrifice, yet the scriptures fall eerily silent about her fate. Was she cast aside? Did she leave willingly? Was her story erased by history? Prepare to be captivated, shocked, and deeply moved as we explore the life, struggles, and ultimate fate of Zipporah, the forgotten wife of Moses. Let's begin. What if the greatest prophet in history had a wife whose story was almost erased? A woman who stood beside Moses, bore his children, and even saved his life, yet was cast into the shadows of time. Her name was Zipporah. She was there when Moses fled Egypt, when he was nothing but a wandering fugitive. She gave him a home, a family, and a reason to believe again. But when destiny called, was she abandoned? Forgotten? Or was her absence something far more mysterious? Why does the Bible suddenly go silent about her? What happened on that terrifying night when God himself sought to kill Moses, and Zipporah had to step in? Her story is filled with love, betrayal, mystery, and a fate no one speaks of. Stay with us as we uncover the forgotten wife of Moses, the woman history tried to erase. In this video, we will uncover the forgotten and mysterious story of Zipporah, the wife of Moses. Who was she? Why was she erased from biblical records? And what truly happened on the night when God sought to kill Moses, only for Zipporah to step in and save him? Here are 7 shocking revelations you'll discover. 1. How Moses met Zipporah and why he married a Midianite woman. 2. The love story between a fugitive and a shepherdess. 3. The terrifying night when God almost took Moses' life. 4. Why Moses sent Zipporah away, was it rejection or protection? 5. The emotional reunion between Moses and his forgotten family. 6. What really happened to Zipporah, did she stay or vanish forever? 7. The powerful lessons from Zipporah's untold journey. Stay with me till the end because this is a story you won't forget. Long before Moses arrived in Midian, there was Jethro, a man of great wisdom and honor. He was not just a leader, he was a high priest, revered among his people. Jethro was a Midianite, a descendant of Abraham through his son Keturah, yet his ways were different from those of the Israelites. He was a man of deep spiritual knowledge, guiding his people with wisdom and understanding. In the heart of Midian, Jethro's household stood as a beacon of stability and reverence. He had daughters, among them Zipporah, a woman of strength, beauty, and a spirit forged in the harsh deserts of Midian. Unlike the women of Egypt, who lived in luxury, or the Israelite women who suffered under Pharaoh's oppression, Zipporah was a shepherdess, hardened by the wilderness, yet graceful and wise. The Midianites were a nomadic people, living in tents, moving with the seasons, and thriving in the land's vast emptiness. Jethro, their spiritual and tribal leader, was not only respected by his own people but later even by Moses, who would call him his mentor. But how did a high priest of Midian and a runaway Egyptian prince cross paths? And how did Zipporah, a woman raised in a different faith, become the wife of the man destined to lead God's chosen people? Their fateful encounter at the well would change the course of history forever. Zipporah was not born into luxury, nor did she grow up in the grandeur of Egypt like Moses. Instead, she was raised in the rugged lands of Midian, a desert region where survival demanded strength, resilience, and wisdom. As the daughter of Jethro, the revered priest of Midian, Zipporah was no ordinary woman, she was born into a family of spiritual leadership, where tradition, honor, and faith were deeply rooted in their way of life. From a young age, Zipporah learned the ways of the desert, how to tend flocks, how to draw water from deep wells, and how to navigate the shifting sands of the wilderness. Unlike Egyptian women, who were adorned in gold and linen, Midianite women were practical and resourceful, wearing simple garments suited for hard labor. Zipporah was a shepherdess, used to long, grueling days under the scorching sun. But beneath her rugged exterior was a woman of intelligence, courage, and quiet grace. As a Midianite, she lived in a society where hospitality was sacred, family was everything, and women played crucial roles in both the home and the fields. Yet, despite their devotion to a higher power, the Midianites did not worship the God of Israel. So when a mysterious Hebrew fugitive stumbled upon their well one fateful day, Zipporah's life would take an unexpected turn, one that would lead her down a path of love, sacrifice, and an unimaginable destiny. The day Zipporah met Moses was like any other, or so she thought. She and her sisters had taken their flock to the well, as they did every day, drawing water beneath the scorching Midianite sun. Life in the desert was harsh, and tending sheep was not just a task but a daily battle for survival. But what Zipporah didn't know was that her life was about to change forever. Far from Midian, in the land of Egypt, a Hebrew man named Moses had just fled for his life. Once a prince in Pharaoh's palace, he had seen an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, and in a moment of rage and justice, he struck the Egyptian down, killing him. But his act of vengeance did not go unnoticed. When word reached Pharaoh, Moses was no longer a nobleman, he was a fugitive. With nowhere else to turn, he fled into the wilderness, wandering through the desert, exhausted, lost, and desperate for refuge. It was at the well of Midian where their two worlds collided. Just as Zipporah and her sisters were drawing water, hostile shepherds arrived, seeking to drive them away. It was a familiar struggle, one they faced often, but today was different. Moses, weary yet strong, stood up for them, driving the oppressors away. To Zipporah, he was a stranger. To Moses, she was a glimpse of hope in an unfamiliar land. But neither of them knew that this moment would bind their fates together forever. The well, a place of survival, a place of destiny. For generations, it had been more than just a source of water, it was where paths intertwined, where love stories began, where fate unfolded. And here, at this very place, Zipporah and Moses met. But this was not just any chance encounter. It was a pattern, one we've seen before in the great love stories of the Bible. Rebekah met Isaac's servant at a well, leading to her marriage with the son of Abraham. Rachel first saw Jacob at a well, and he loved her at first sight. And now, standing at the well of Midian, Zipporah and Moses were unknowingly stepping into the same divine pattern, a story woven by God himself. Moses, weary from his journey, stood as an outsider in a foreign land. Zipporah, strong and independent, was used to facing the cruelty of rival shepherds. But today, someone stood up for her. A stranger, a fugitive, a man unlike any she had ever known. He didn't belong to her people, yet he defended her, fought for her, and protected her. In that moment, as Moses wiped the sweat from his brow and Zipporah looked into the eyes of the man who had just become her unexpected savior, something unseen was set in motion. This was more than kindness. More than coincidence. This was destiny. And neither of them knew how deeply their lives were about to change. When Zipporah and her sisters returned home that day, something was different. They usually came back weary from battle, struggling against the shepherds who tried to drive them away. But today, there was no struggle. Today, a man had defended them, a foreigner, a stranger, yet a protector. Jethro, their father, listened carefully as his daughters eagerly recounted the story. Who was this man? Why would an outsider risk himself for them? He was intrigued, not just by the act of courage but by the mysterious figure behind it. Where is he? Jethro asked, realizing they had left their savior behind. A man who shows kindness should never be repaid with abandonment. So, Jethro sent for Moses, inviting him into his home. And when Moses entered Jethro's tent, he was not treated as a fugitive or an outcast, he was treated as a guest, a brother, a friend. For the first time since fleeing Egypt, Moses felt safe. He sat before Jethro, sharing his past, his fears, his exile. Jethro, a man of wisdom, listened intently, sensing that this meeting was no accident. Jethro saw more than a weary traveler before him. He saw a man marked by destiny. A man who carried a heavy burden. A man whom God himself had not abandoned. And in this act of hospitality, Moses, once a prince, now a wanderer, found a new home. And soon, he would find something more, a wife. Moses had once walked through the golden halls of Egypt, clothed in fine linen, revered as a prince. He was raised with power, trained in warfare, and destined for greatness. Yet, in a single moment, his world collapsed, he became a fugitive, running for his life. Now, in the land of Midian, everything was different. Gone were the riches, the servants, and the luxuries of Pharaoh's palace. In their place were the open fields, the scorching desert, and the bleating of sheep. From a prince, he had become a shepherd. At first, it must have felt like punishment. Shepherding was considered lowly work, meant for the poor, the forgotten, the outcasts. But what Moses did not yet realize was that God was preparing him. The desert was his training ground, the sheep his first flock. Before he could lead a nation, he had to learn to lead in the wilderness. During this time, Zipporah was by his side. She watched as this once powerful man humbled himself, embracing the simple life of a shepherd. Did she see greatness in him even then? Did she know that the man leading sheep today would one day lead millions? For 40 years, Moses lived in Midian, hidden from the world, hidden from history. But God had not forgotten him. And soon, the burning bush would call him to a destiny far greater than he had ever imagined. At first, Moses was a stranger, a fugitive with no home, no future, and no identity beyond his past. But in the land of Midian, among the tents of Jethro, he found something he never expected, love. Zipporah was not like the women of Egypt. She was strong, independent, and accustomed to the hardships of the desert. She had never known a man like Moses, a man who carried the wisdom of Egypt yet walked with the humility of a shepherd. He was quiet, contemplative, a man with burdens he never spoke of. But in the stillness of the desert nights, Zipporah began to see something deeper, a man searching for himself, searching for purpose. As the seasons passed, they grew closer. She watched him tend the sheep, learning the ways of the wilderness as if he had always belonged there. He watched her move with grace and wisdom, strong yet gentle, fierce yet kind. Conversations turned into laughter, shared work turned into companionship, and soon, affection blossomed into love. When Jethro saw their bond, he knew. And so, Moses took Zipporah as his wife, not in the courts of Egypt but under the open skies of Midian. Two lives, from different worlds, now bound together. But what neither of them knew was that their love would be tested, not just by time, but by destiny itself. Because soon, God would call Moses back, to Egypt, to his people, and to a mission that would change everything. The day had come. Under the vast Midianite sky, a wedding unlike any other was about to take place. It was not a royal celebration like the grand feasts of Egypt, nor was it adorned with gold and jewels. But in the simplicity of the wilderness, something sacred was unfolding, a union ordained by destiny. Moses, the Hebrew fugitive, had found not only refuge in Midian but love in Zipporah. She was no ordinary woman, she was the daughter of Jethro, a priest and leader among her people. Their love had grown in the quiet moments of tending flocks, in shared glances across the desert, in whispered words beneath the stars. And now, before their families, they would be joined as one. But this was more than a wedding, it was the blending of two worlds. A Hebrew and a Midianite. A man raised in the grandeur of Egypt, now humbled as a shepherd. A woman of the desert, strong and unshaken, now bound to a man with a hidden destiny. Would their love withstand the trials to come? Could their two worlds truly merge? Before the gathered tribe, vows were spoken, prayers were offered, and the covenant was sealed. Zipporah, with her fierce loyalty, became Moses' wife, his partner, his anchor in the wilderness. But neither of them knew that soon, the voice of God would call Moses away. Their love, their marriage, everything, was about to be tested in ways they could never imagine. Zipporah had married a shepherd, but soon she would learn she was married to a man of divine destiny. Moses was no ordinary husband, he was chosen by God for a mission that would shake the foundations of nations. At first, their life together in Midian was peaceful. She knew Moses as a man of quiet strength, a loving husband, a devoted father. But everything changed the day he stood before her, his face pale, his eyes burning with something she had never seen before. He spoke of a flaming bush, of God's voice calling him back to Egypt, of a mission greater than anything they had imagined. Zipporah's heart must have pounded with fear. Egypt? The land he had fled from. The land of mighty kings and ruthless rulers. She had spent years building a life with Moses, raising their children in the safety of the wilderness. Now, that safety was slipping away. Yet, she knew she had married a man with a calling. She had seen something in him long before he heard the voice of God. And though she did not fully understand what lay ahead, she stood by him. But Zipporah's journey as Moses' wife would not be easy. She would face trials, loneliness, and moments of doubt. The man she loved would soon become more than her husband, he would become a prophet, a leader, and a man torn between duty and family. The cries of a newborn pierced the quiet Midianite night. A son was born, a child of both the wilderness and the legacy of a forgotten nation. When Moses held his firstborn in his arms, his heart must have swelled with love, but also with sorrow. He named him Gershom, meaning a foreigner there, for he knew he was a stranger in a land not his own. For years, Moses had wandered Midian, trying to forget Egypt, trying to bury his past. But with the birth of Gershom, his past had a face, a future, a name. This child was both Midianite and Hebrew, a living reminder of two worlds Moses could never fully belong to. Time passed, and another son was born, Eliezer, meaning, "My God is my help." By this time, something in Moses had changed. The voice of God had spoken. The calling was near. One day, as Moses led his flock through the wilderness, he saw something strange, a bush engulfed in flames, yet not consumed. He stepped closer, curiosity pulling him in. And then, a voice called his name. "Moses, Moses." It was the voice of God. In that moment, everything changed. The life Moses had built in Midian, the quiet days, the simple joys, the love he shared with Zipporah and their sons, was about to be shattered by destiny. God had seen the suffering of the Israelites in Egypt, and he had chosen Moses to set them free. A runaway shepherd would become a deliverer. A fugitive would stand before Pharaoh. A man who once fled would now return with divine power. Moses had heard the voice of destiny. And now, nothing would ever be the same. The night Moses told Zipporah they were leaving, her heart must have pounded with fear. This was not just a journey, this was a return to the land of danger, to the land Moses had once fled. Egypt. The name itself must have sent a shiver down her spine. Moses had changed since the burning bush. His voice carried authority, his steps were heavier, and his eyes burned with something divine. He was no longer just her husband, he was a man on a mission. But what about Zipporah? Where did she fit in this great calling? She had been his strength, his companion, the mother of his children. Now, she was traveling alongside him, unaware that she would soon be tested in ways she never expected. Their journey was harsh. The wilderness stretched endlessly, and every mile brought them closer to Pharaoh's wrath. But it was not just Pharaoh they had to face, God himself would test them. One night, a sudden and terrifying event changed everything. God sought to take Moses' life. Why? Because Moses had failed to uphold the covenant of his people, he had not circumcised their son. This was no small oversight, it was a sacred command from God, a sign of his promise to Israel. And Moses, the very man sent to lead them, had neglected it. Without hesitation, Zipporah took a flint knife and circumcised their son. With trembling hands, she touched the blood to Moses' feet, crying out, "Surely, you are a bridegroom of blood to me." At that moment, the wrath lifted, and Moses was spared. But what did Zipporah feel in that moment? Relief? Anger? Fear? She had saved her husband's life, but she had also seen a side of God she never expected, one that would haunt her forever. But what did she mean? Was it anger? Was it sorrow? Was it a cry of devotion or one of disillusionment? Some believe Zipporah spoke in shock and resentment. She had just performed a sacred Hebrew ritual, one foreign to her Midianite upbringing. Had she just glimpsed the true cost of being Moses' wife? Had she realized that loving a man called by God meant walking a road paved with blood? Others see her words as a declaration of salvation. The blood of circumcision had sealed the covenant once more. Moses was spared because of the sacrifice. In this view, her words echo a deeper spiritual truth: blood would always be the price of redemption. Regardless of her intent, one thing is clear: this moment changed everything. Zipporah had saved Moses, but she had also stepped into a divine mystery she never fully understood. And perhaps, in that moment, she knew she could never walk this path beside him forever. This moment in Zipporah and Moses' story is one of the most mysterious and chilling events in the Bible. Why would God, who had just called Moses to lead his people, suddenly seek to kill him? The journey to Egypt had begun, but Zipporah and her children did not go all the way. At some point, Moses made a painful decision: to send them back to Midian. But why? Was this an act of rejection, or was it a desperate act of protection? Some believe that after the terrifying night where God nearly struck Moses down, something shifted in Zipporah. Had she seen too much? Had she realized that Moses' mission was not just dangerous, but drenched in divine blood and sacrifice? Some argue that she never fully embraced the weight of Moses' calling, and sending her back was a quiet separation, not out of hatred, but because their paths were no longer the same. Others suggest Moses sent her away for her own safety. The road ahead was filled with peril, plagues, confrontations with Pharaoh, and a destiny far beyond a peaceful family life. As a husband and father, he may have wanted to shield them from the chaos that was coming. Perhaps he knew that his role as a husband was now secondary to his role as a prophet of God. Whether it was rejection or protection, one thing is clear: this was a painful moment. Zipporah had been by his side through exile, through marriage, through divine encounters. Now, she was gone, watching from afar as Moses walked into history. Would they ever be reunited? Or was this the end of their story together? The Bible does not tell us if Moses longed for Zipporah in those years of separation. But one thing is certain: his journey was one of sacrifice. He had left behind a wife and children, not for personal ambition, but because the call of God demanded everything. And in answering that call, he walked a lonely road, one that only a chosen few could ever understand. After what must have felt like an eternity, the day finally came. Zipporah, who had once stood by Moses' side, who had watched him leave on a mission that consumed his very soul, was about to see him again. But after so much time apart, what would this reunion feel like? Would Moses greet her with the warmth of a long-lost husband, or would duty still overshadow love? It was Jethro, the wise Midianite priest, who took the initiative. He saw the pain of separation. He knew Moses had been buried in the weight of leading Israel, but he also knew Moses was still a husband and a father. So he gathered Zipporah, Gershom, and Eleazar, and journeyed to the Israelite camp. This reunion was more than just a meeting of a family, it was a moment of reckoning. Had the years apart strengthened their bond, or had the distance built an unspoken wall between them? The moment had finally arrived. Zipporah stood before Moses once again, but was he still the man she had loved, or had destiny changed him beyond recognition? Had years of leading a nation hardened his heart, or did it still beat for the wife he once cherished? As their eyes met, a flood of unspoken emotions filled the space between them. Did Moses rush to embrace her, or did he hesitate, weighed down by the burden of his calling? Did he see her as his beloved, or as a remnant of a life he had left behind? After the long-awaited reunion, Jethro observed Moses carefully. He saw a man burdened beyond measure, a leader carrying the weight of an entire nation on his shoulders. Day and night, Moses stood alone, judging disputes, guiding his people, answering their endless needs. But where was Zipporah in all of this? Jethro, wise and discerning, knew what his daughter had endured. He had brought her and the children back. Seeing Moses' exhaustion, Jethro offered counsel. "You cannot do this alone." He advised Moses to appoint leaders, to delegate, to share the burden, but in his wisdom, was Jethro also subtly reminding him of something greater? That family was not a burden, but a gift. That a leader, no matter how great, still needed a home to return to. But was Zipporah part of the plan? Had Moses already moved past their marriage, or would he finally recognize that his calling did not have to mean loneliness? So we ask, was Zipporah simply a chapter in Moses' story? Or was she a silent pillar of strength, whose love and sacrifice made his destiny possible? We may never know. But her presence, though overlooked, shaped history in ways we cannot imagine. Zipporah was not just a wife, she was a woman of action. When Moses' life was on the line, she was the one who saved him. When he hesitated, she did what needed to be done. What if she had been there when Moses struggled under the weight of leadership? What if she had spoken wisdom when he was weary? Could she have softened his burdens, prevented his moments of doubt, even changed the way he led? Without Zipporah, Moses had no true partner to confide in. The man who once found refuge in her family now stood alone before a restless, rebellious nation. Would he have made different choices if she had been by his side? Could she have been the one to help him control his temper, stopping him from striking the rock, a mistake that cost him the promised land? Perhaps history unfolded exactly as God intended. Or perhaps, in Zipporah's absence, something was lost. So, we are left with a question that lingers in the echoes of time. If Zipporah had been by Moses' side all along, would history have been different? What do you think? Zipporah's story may be one of silence and mystery, but it is far from insignificant. She was the woman who stood beside Moses before the miracles, before the plagues, before the splitting of the Red Sea. She was there when he was just a man, not yet a prophet. Yet, history left her behind. Was it fate? Culture? Or was it simply the price of being tied to a man with a divine mission? We may never know. But what we do know is that Zipporah's courage, sacrifice, and strength deserve to be remembered. She saved Moses' life. She bore his children. She was part of his story, even if the world tried to forget her. And now, her story has been told. Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this exposition of the life of Zipporah, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful biblical story, and don't forget to share this video with others who love uncovering the hidden mysteries of the Bible. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep seeking the untold stories of faith.